Greetings and salutations and welcome to Illegitimate Legends, the show where I like to talk about some of the more unusual League of Legends builds. Now this is a very special video, a very special episode of Illegitimate Legends, and it's special for two reasons. The first is that this is the best build I think I have ever done. AP Nautilus is pretty freaking good, but this build is, if not equal, then more powerful. It's not a far cry from the original build for this champion being Nautilus, but it is a far cry from the current meta. You wouldn't see this happening normally, and I think that is a shame. I think that this needs to happen more, because it's quite powerful. But I'll get into that in a moment after I tell you about the second reason. The second reason is a bit more sad for some of you, probably not really. This is going to be the last episode of Illegitimate Legends for this season of League of Legends, and for this season of whatever my series runs in. It doesn't typically run in seasons, but now it does, just so you know. The reason for this is I'd like to take some time to get to know the new items without releasing a bunch of builds and a bunch of videos which then immediately become outdated. So about 2 or 3 weeks into pre-season I will start this series again. You can enjoy it then, but until then I'll have some other content for you. So, this week we are taking a look at Nautilus played in the mid lane, with a heavy bent on AP, so let's call it AP Mid Nautilus. AP Mid Nautilus works because Nautilus. Really quite that simple. Let's explain Nautilus for everyone who hasn't played him, which seems to be a lot of people. Nautilus has 4 crowd controls. I've been up against teams that don't have 4 crowd controls. Nautilus has 4 crowd controls all on his lonesome. It's actually rather spectacular. I don't know of any other champion who can match him in terms of raw crowd control potential. Except maybe champions who have slows out the ass Hello Anivia, but it's not the same. Nautilus's crowd controls lie on his passive, which provides additional damage on the first strike in combat. That first strike occurs every 12 seconds, so it's not always the first strike, but it is a strike every 12 seconds in combat. Additional damage, starting at about 9 damage at level 1 and reaching 108 damage, doubling your base AD at level 18. And also provides a snare. The snare starts at 0.75 seconds and reaches 1.75 seconds, if I am not mistaken. Not much at the start, but it's a damn strong snare toward the end game. It's one of the most powerful passives in existence, and the best thing is, it's every 12 seconds per individual target, so it's like, hey, I'm basically the same as Bear Stance Udyr. Less stunny, more anchor in your face. The next crowd control you have is part of Dredgeline, your Q. Your Q basically acts the same as a Murmur's grab and Blitzcrank's pull. You grab them and pull yourself to them while pulling them to you. If it connects, you meet in the middle. If it connects with land, you meet the land does not come to you. This means, of course, that you can't fire it through physical obstacles, but you can use physical obstacles as a means of escape, and doing so halves the active cooldown of that ability. Your W ability provides a shield that gets stronger the more health you have, as well as additional damage over time and area of effect for this damage over time on your basic attacks. Your auto attacks hit everything in a splash, dealing a dot to everything hit. Your base damage, however, is not spread to all targets, so that's something you need to consider, and that damage over time is based off AP, so it's kinda got a twofold scaling effect. Your E provides a shockwave which hits slowly, meaning that you can hit the same target 3 times with reduced effects for subsequent hits, but re-applying the slow on each hit. This is your 3rd cooldown if you're not counting. And lastly, you have your ultimate, which is an AoE roughly the size of Malphite's ult. It is a knock-up. It hits everyone in a line as it travels, finally hitting the main target for the main knock-up. Everyone hit on the way gets mini knock-ups, but your main Malphite-sized knock-up is centered on your target for this ability, meaning that you'll never miss, as is sometimes the case with Malphite. If you're clever, you've noticed that this kit is extremely good at preventing escapes, and works wonders against any enemy who are close to you. The kind of champions who don't like to be close to people, and who like to run away if they are close to people, are mid champions, which is why I'm taking Nautilus in the mid lane. And if we go to the early game, you'll see why this is so powerful. So your early game is incredibly simple. Step 1, spawn in. Step 2, buy a ruby crystal. Step 3, get your W. Your W ability isn't particularly effective with early aggression, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to be a bruiser, and mid lane doesn't actually cope well against bruisers. Some champions do so better than others, and you will be at a slight disadvantage at level 1 because they will outrange you, which is why you take your shield. No mid champion can actually break that shield unless you let them. The nature of Nautilus is such that he is incredibly strong, and that early health crystal means that his shield is stronger than it should be at this point. The nature of a AP mid, or sometimes an AD mid on the other hand, is such that they're strong, but they're not there yet. The point of an AP is that they've got power, and their power does come from their abilities, but they want more abilities. They want to be able to nuke you, and they want to get AP before they're super effective. AP mids do their most damage in the middle game. You can soak any hits they throw at you early. The biggest risks, however, are that they are going to dramatically outrange you, or dramatically be able to bypass minions in their damage. Champions who can throw abilities like Ziggs, or can shoot over minions like Ahri, they're gonna be your biggest issue, but you can still take them because you can soak those hits on your W without worrying yourself too much. And the fact that your passive increases your damage on your first strike gives you really good last hit potential. The minions can be on half health by the time you're about level 4, and you'll be one-shotting them from that state. That advantage in the ability to last hit with ease negates the loss when you can't outrange your opponent. After you've leveled up your first time, pick up Dredgeline, then get your W again, and then pick up your E. From this point onwards, you want to be leveling your W first, then your R, as appropriate, and then your E. Your Q comes last because, like I said earlier, it doesn't really benefit much from decreased cooldown. It's fairly short cooldown already, and you're not using it for damage, you're using it to get in close. Once you hit level 4, it's time to start showing them why Nautilus is an incredible bully. Get a line on them, and then actually literally get a line on them. So basically, find an opportunity and then Q in. Hit your W as you arrive, or before if you had damage incoming at the time, then hit your E as they try to get away. Once your auto attack lands, getting the additional damage from your passive, they are in serious hurt. A third to half their health will be gone at this point, particularly if you've managed to hit them with all 3 chunks from your E. They will want to flash away, and in all probability they will, but you haven't spent any mana. Yes, Nautilus doesn't have much mana, and his abilities are reasonably high cost, so you did spend some, but nothing that you're not going to regenerate while you're just waiting for the next fight. They'll pop some health potions, rinse and repeat this technique indefinitely. If you're worried that a jungler is around, pop some wards down, you'll be fine. Don't worry, you can pull yourself away from danger, or pop Ghost to run through the minions and escape. Ghost, very useful over Flash, because you can get through the minions. Yes, Flash can take you over minions very quickly, but you can't just charge through continuing waves until you get to the point where you can anchor your opponent. With this early strategy, the best thing you want is a jungler who's got crowd control as well. You can crowd lock an opponent to the point where they actually cannot even flash away. They just don't have an opportunity to move before you've killed them. It's a really potent bullying early lane, because once they fall out of the lane, you can stay and farm. Get more items, get ahead, stay ahead. Keep repeating the same technique with dramatically improved effects each time, because you're only getting further ahead of them, and they're only falling further behind. They can't do anything at this point, and you've won your lane. Granted, you won't be pushing the tower anytime soon. Nautilus simply doesn't push towers particularly well. He can clear minions like a god, but he's not ranged, he has to get in close, and that can be dangerous if there's a jungler around. So anytime you see an opportunity to deal tower damage, it's probably a better chance to go home, or stay back a little bit and avoid those ganks, because they will be coming for you. They will be gunning for you because you've proven your dominance. So now it's come to the late game, and you're still Nautilus. By this point, you should be thoroughly ahead of the enemy mid, or rather, the enemy mid should be thoroughly behind, and you should be on par with where a mid should be. Now, your build at this point should be Rod of Ages, followed by Boots, probably cooldown reduction, because you got long cooldowns to deal with, and that's just a bit of a shame. Your third item should be Liandry's Torment, and then you want to be looking at Health, AP, and then a little bit of Magic Resist, and a little bit of Armor. I like to go Rylay's Crystal Scepter, a Iceborne Gauntlet, and an Abyssal Scepter. Iceborne Gauntlet and Abyssal Scepter being ordered based on where the enemy's damage is coming from, magic or physical. With that build, you want to look at being Nautilus. That doesn't sound awfully complicated, and really it isn't. You want to land the initiates, and you want to start the fights, and when you're not starting fights, when you're in a fight, you want to be peeling off a high damage dealer, and then bursting them down. Taking their damage, and then getting another burst off. Basically, filling that tanky Bruiser AP role, just constantly casting damaging abilities for their wonderful AoE, and using your crowd controls to control the crowd that is the enemy team. You become an immensely beefy target with your shield, although you are faced with this subtle choice. Do you use your shield to get additional damage from the dot, or do you use your shield to soak damage? Most of the time you want to take it to soak damage, because not being hurt is more important than a little bit of AoE on your auto attacks. Considering you don't do many of those, you mostly just stamp on the ground and watch as the splash shreds your opponents. With the Liandry's Torment, you will be dealing plenty of damage, even though your ratios aren't particularly strong, and most of your damage does come from your base stats and your base power from the abilities. And with all of that, essentially your teamfight presence comes from your CC, but because you've got so much CC and nearly all of it can be used on multiple targets, your team presence is huge. We're talking like Amamaru goes in and ults a team sort of huge. You can just mess up everyone's day simply by messing up their day with crowd controls, by messing up their day with AoE damage and slows. Never underestimate the power of the slows, and that's late game Nautilus. I really want to see more Bruiser AP Mid style of play, because it's quite effective against the typical AP nuker, because the AP nuker relies on being able to kill their opponent. If they can't kill their opponent because they're too beefy to do it, then their opponent is usually going to kill them, or at least give them a hard time, and Nautilus is a prime example of this. I never would have expected this from when he was released, that he could actually fill the mid lane very, very well, but I have been shown the light. This build works. Mid Nautilus is a fantastic play. Definitely go out and give it a try. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you later. Good night. My team may think we are done, but I know this will be fun. Just watch, my lane will be won, 'cause I have gone and locked Naughty. Full nuke, they think they have won. I laugh, no damage was done. My anchor's bringing the fun. I think it's time to get naughty. 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 I think it's time to get naughty.